So this is an Airtouch 5 air conditioning zone control system. Should be already running the app. This system controls two Mitsubishi ducted air conditioning systems connected to different parts of my house, and I'm going to talk you through right now on why I think this thing is fantastic. I also want to talk about why these Mitsubishi controllers, which are what you would normally have, this is not a zoned controller, this is just a wall controller, are nowhere near as good as this, and why you don't actually need to have one of these. Right, so these are the outdoor units. I have two of them, and they're both identical except one's a 14 kilowatt, and that's a heating and cooling rating, not a power rating, by the way. The power rating is more about the maximum current you will see. That's effectively how much power this thing will consume, absolute worst case. By the way, it's usually when it's in heating mode, not air conditioning mode, not cooling mode, sorry, but it does that. And the other one's a 10 kilowatt. Now why are there two? Well, the answer to that is I would have needed like a 20 kilowatt, 24 kilowatt unit to cool the entire house. And that would require three-phase power to run that single unit. And interestingly, a big unit can also not spool down as much as two smaller ones. So the big one here is used for all the rooms and copes perfectly. And the small one there is used for the living area. Now this one is zoned. Every single room has its own zone and its own temperature sensor, controlled by the Airtouch. That one is not zoned, but it's still controlled by the Airtouch. Let's talk about three-phase power. So I actually have three-phase power. I had to get three-phase power. Now the reason for that is single phase probably wouldn't have had enough amps to support those two units together. Not legally. The other reason I needed three-phase power is I had 5 kilowatt solar, and then I got that Tesla Powerwall. Now the rule here, where I live, that's a bit spiderwebby, I better clean that. The rule here, where power is provided by SP AusNet, is that you can only have 10 kilowatts of inverters per phase. And my house was single phase, like every house normally is. Older houses anyway, brand new houses are tending to be three-phase power now because we're going away from gas. So I had 5 kilowatt solar, I had a 5 kilowatt inverter, and I added more solar panels before I got those. So I had to get three-phase power. So what does it look like? Behind here is an absolute mess of cables. I cannot fit anything else more in here. But you've got your main three-phase breaker, and everything in the house I've marked which phase it's on. So the house is on phase 1, the first phase, as is the Tesla Powerwall. So if the power goes out, I'm pretty much good. And the main room living area air conditioner will also operate. However, of course, you've got to be careful because your combined load of everything in the house and the air conditioner on that single phase, which also includes the oven, by the way, which should be moved to a different phase, could overload the 5 kilowatt output of the Tesla Powerwall and the solar panel output as it is at any given time. But the long story short is I needed three-phase power to get my extra solar. And once I had that, it meant that I could actually get appropriate air conditioning on two different phases. So the way I have it set up right now is that the 14 kilowatt unit is on phase number 3. The 10 kilowatt, as I said before, is on the main house phase with everything else. So if the power goes out, this guy keeps operating and this guy goes off, but I can at least cool a little bit, at least, the main living area. As you can see, this guy's running right now. He's in cool mode. It's going to be 37 degrees today. This guy's in dry mode and it's quite cool inside, so he's not running much. This guy's running because these bedrooms along here are starting to heat up, most likely. Right, so now we have to talk about why the heck you want to zone your AC system and exactly how to do it right the first time, obviously focusing on how Airtouch works. This next few minutes is the critical stuff, folks. If you're going to watch anything, watch this. So let's look at the layout of this property we're in and talk about why we want zoning with per room zone control. So let's start by talking about the non-zoned room. So let's draw the outlets that this room has roughly. They're in this area. And the, let's draw an arrow for this, and the temperature sensor is right there on the wall here. So, and also, by the way, the return duct is right there on the wall. This little square here used to be the old return for the ducted heating. It's now the return for this air conditioner. So it's on the floor. So the air conditioner outlets air. The air effectively passes through here and comes up here and passes by the sensor. Pretty simple. Very little can go wrong with this. You might find some across the room deviations in temperature, like being in the kitchen, but we haven't found it. So it's been really, really good. So assuming there was no other air conditioning turned on, through convection, you might find that some of this air leaks into other rooms, but it's not going to cool the house, so that's obviously not suitable for whole house cooling. So now let's talk about cooling all the other rooms. Now, obviously, if you want a room cooled, you need an air conditioner head unit in that room, like a split system, or you need an outlet from a ducted AC. So looking at split systems, we would have had to have had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 9 separate split systems. Now you can multi-head these, so you could actually have, say, for example, 3 outdoor units, which would take care. So it's 3 to 1, for example, like three head units back to 1, outdoor unit. But my wife said, and I thank her for this, I'm not going to have 9 wall warts on every room, on the wall of every room. And I agree with that. It just doesn't make sense. So instead, we went ducted. So let's talk about the ducting. So every room has a duct, and they're generally opposite the door. So like so. And this one has 2 because it's a large room. And the sizing of these ducts will be done by an engineer. Right, it's like an air conditioning engineer will design this for you. I'm just showing you what I've got. I don't have one in the laundry. Don't really need it. Bedroom 2, it's over here. Study, the room I'm in, it is over here. I've got to make sure I remember where the door is. That's over there. The ensuite, it's right in the middle. In the master bedroom, it's over there. And the home theatre room, it's over there. Okay, so if we want to cool each room nicely so that the comfort level in each room is, say, 23 degrees, or if your comfort level is 21 degrees or 24 degrees, but someone else's comfort level is 22, how do you do that? Well, let's talk about where the return is for this air conditioning system, and it happens to be right here in the roof, on the ceiling right here for this system. So without any zoning control, the default of your air conditioner is that the return air sensor is the temperature sense, right, for controlling the air conditioner. So default temperature control equals AC unit return air sensor in the ceiling. Right, it's inside the air conditioning unit. Now, it won't be the temperature of what's in the ceiling fully, like just in your roof space, which is going to be really hot on a hot day. It's the return air. So what actually happens to that return air? Let's visualize each room, or let's talk about each room. So let's say our desired temperature is 23 degrees. Okay. And the temperature sensing to detect if we've hit that temperature is in the ceiling in the air conditioning unit. So, it's up in the roof. So it's going to put out cold air. All right, and that cold air is going to hit this outlet here, let's say for bedroom 4, and it's going to flow across bedroom 4. It's going to come up the hallway here, It's going to go through this hallway door. Now, assuming we don't have this air conditioner on as well, which is going to be sucking some of that air into this duct, which is a complexity in all of itself. Let's keep going. Oops, I have to keep drawing a new one here. So it goes all the way across here and it goes into that duct. Okay, so this guy wants to be 23 degrees, but the sun's beating down on this window. So let's say it's currently 26 degrees in that room. The cool air comes through here and hits this one. All right, let's also say that the study wants to be 23 degrees, but the sun's not beating down on that one anymore because, you know, north is over here, right? So I need to draw that. So, you know, that's north, right? North is that way to the left. So the study, the air, let's say, comes through here and comes back there. And this other room here, the ensuite, the air comes this way. And from the master bedroom, the air comes this way. From the home theatre, the air comes this way. And the hot rooms are these ones, all right? And there's also this bedroom here, and the air's coming that way to get to the return. Now, if this area here is cool, right, or these rooms are cool, what'll happen is by the time this hot air, well, this air exits here, comes into the room, the air gets heated because the room is hot, right? And the air flows across here and goes into the air conditioning unit return. And these rooms are all cool. So the return air hitting the air conditioner is probably, I don't know, 22 degrees. So this room, for example, if the air conditioner is satisfied and powers down and just goes into fan mode, this room's getting cooked because the air conditioner thinks it's satisfied. It thinks it's reached its set temperature and it just turns off the cooling, right? Turns off the compressor. So this person gets cooked. You don't want that. So let's clean that out. Let's talk about the traditional zoning, or the, we'll say, Mitsubishi zoning system. Mitsubishi, I'm going to turn off bold. Mitsubishi zoning control. Max 4 zones in entire, for entire AC unit. So let's say the AC unit, which is doing the rooms, can have a maximum of 4 zones. Where do I put them? Which room, right? So you're constantly compromising, trying to find the room that needs the most cooling. It's just like, where do I put it? If I put it here, then it cools this room, but then the other rooms get cold because it's zoned in terms of temperature sensors. Is it zoned in terms of blocking off the air to each of these ducts, right? Like to the bedroom 2, study, ensuite, master bedroom, home theatre. Like if I put the temperature sensor in here and this satisfies, how do I make sure? It just doesn't work. You're just getting tight. You get tied up in knots. And you might design it and build it and deploy it and then find it's a complete mess and the house does not cool or heat the way you want, or it cools the way you want but doesn't heat the way you want because of the way the house is used in summer and winter. And you constantly keep calling your air conditioner installer saying, what do I do? And the most they can say is, it's just the way it is, mate. You got to live with it. It's a nightmare. So, cutting the long story short, and I've spent a long time talking about this already, let's talk about third-party aftermarket zoning such as Airtouch. I like Airtouch. I've chosen Airtouch. Like any system, it's imperfect. But let's talk now about the way we can do zoning. So with Airtouch, every single room has its own zone damper and every single room has its own temperature sensor. So we're going to draw where they are in each room. So there's one here, and in this particular room, there's one here, and it's here on this wall. Technically it's right there, but it's hard to draw. In the bathroom, it's right there on the wall. In bedroom 2, it's right here by the door. In the study, it happens to be on the wall. I've got a desk in the corner here. It's on there because that's where I sit. That's where I want the temperature to be good, right? So the temperature sensor should be where the room is being used, right? In the ensuite, it is right there in the master bedroom. It's right here in the home theatre room. It's right there. So what we find now is every single room has its own temperature sensor. That temperature sensor is bonded to the zone. So each of these circles I want you to now view as an outlet with its own zone damper. So if I set bedroom 4 to 23, bedroom 3 to 22, rumpus to 24, bath to 21, 21, 23, what have you, the air conditioner will activate and keep the compressor running based on the lowest temperature setting that hasn't been met. All right, so if this one's set to 19 in the bedroom here and the rest are all 22, the compressor will keep running until this room is satisfied. So how do we avoid these other rooms being overcooled? Well, the answer is they have their own zone damper. They close. So once these rooms satisfy, each of these will close. Bedroom will close, bed 3 will close, rumpus will close. So the risk of doing this is if every single room is satisfied, except this one over here, except this bedroom, right? What's going to happen is there's going to be a pressure buildup in the ductwork. And the pressure, because even the fan on its lowest mode, the airflow of that unit is designed to feed a certain square meterage, right? A certain total duct size. If that size is too small, the pressure will build up and it can literally blow the ducts off the air conditioner itself, off the unit in the ceiling, or can blow the ductwork off the outlets, or a mix of both. And then you have all your cold air being wasted, for example, leaking into the ceiling space, and it's just going to be effectively a non-functional air conditioning system in terms of being able to cool your house. So what do you do? So with Airtouch, it has this spill or bypass setting. Now with Airtouch, you can say, well, if only one zone is on and it's going to blow the ducts apart, I want this room to be the spill, right? So it's going to open these up to make sure there's not too much pressure in the ducts. Unfortunately, what that's going to mean is that this room is going to get overcooled because let's say it's already satisfied and now you've only got one other zone open and now these two ducts down here are open and cold air is flooding into that room. It's going to get overcooled, ruining the comfort in that room. So then you might say, well, let's not do that room, let's do this room. Well, then the problem occurs over there, right? And you keep moving the problem around. You can have multiple zones. You could spill the home theatre and the rumpus. But then depending on how your house is used, that might not work. So what do you do? Well, the answer is install a bypass. And my advice to you is if you get a third-party zone control system, always, always, always install a bypass, whether you think you need it or not. So the bypass is essentially just a thing in the ceiling. So if I draw the air conditioner duct, it's air conditioning unit, it's in the ceiling, it's above the house, in the ceiling, and you've got the outlets running to each of these rooms. So if I just draw the outlet running to that room, actually let's not do it that way, let's do it green. There's an outlet running that way to that duct, and maybe it's split off here to go to that one, and maybe it goes like this. In fact, I'm pretty sure it does. Oh, oops. I'm pretty sure in this house it does kind of do that, right? What you can also do is you can put in, and let's say the return, I'll just still do it in green. So here's the return, this square here. That's the return, right? So what we can do is we can install a bypass, and I'll do this in blue, which connects the outlet. Oh God, which connects the outlet. I need to do this in blue. Blue, click blue, please. It connects the outlet to the inlet. So what happens is if the Airtouch system decides you've only got one zone open over here, I'll draw a line to that zone. Or I'll draw a line to that duct, right? So it's only air going this way to that duct. What it'll do is it'll either fully or partially open that bypass. So the air leaving the air conditioner will loop back on itself into the intake. This is great because now it means you've got no risk of the overpressure. I'm just actually going to start writing about Airtouch. So Airtouch zoning control. Max, I believe it's 16 zones. Question mark. Default of 8 is supported out of the box. Now I actually have more than 8 because I've got 9 zones. Let me clarify, how many zones have I got? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I do have 9. So I needed an extension to support the 9th zone. Can be extended with extension module. So I've actually technically got 10 zones because I've got the bypass. The bypass is just another one of those zone motors, but rather than controlling an outlet, it's controlling a loop back into the intake. I don't believe no real limit on the number of temp sensors. You can have more than one temp sensor per zone with readings averaged for zone temp control. So let's say you had a really large zone, well, this one's quite big, or even the family area. If you had a really large zone here, you could have a sensor on each end of the room and use the average of the two to decide whether the room is satisfied or not. Pretty cool. Let's get to the summary. Summary rule guidance. 1. Zone every room with its own zone damper, motor, and own temperature sensor. Yep. Always install a bypass duct. Don't use spill. For Airtouch 5, make sure to use latest software with Intelligent Auto capability. And I'm going to talk about that too. Okay, so now we're at the console, and I've slowed this video down a heap so I can show you what's going on here. So number 1, this arrow here is pointing to this little icon, and that icon denotes that this is in bypass mode, which basically means that nearly all the zones, or all of the zones, have satisfied, and the system is now in bypass to avoid A, blowing out the duct, and B, blowing air into rooms that don't need it because the zones are all closed now. The next thing to look at is this Intelligent Auto icon, which is showing here that the fan speed is controlled now by the Airtouch, and this is actually a new feature where it will actually ramp up and ramp down the fan speed based on the size of the ducts in each room, so that it's actually providing enough airflow if all of the zones are open. It didn't do this before. Now we're going to edit and play with a particular zone by closing that zone, which will just close it off. And you'll note when we closed it off that the temperature changed up here to state that it's actually no longer just the actual zone temperatures, but an average of all of them that it's actually working to, because this is no longer controlled by temperature, it's just held open. Now if it's held open, we don't want the system to be on all the time. We want to be able to still control when the air conditioner stops the compressor, and that's why it goes back into a temperature control up here, where you can change this slider as opposed to it being driven by the whichever zone sensor has the lowest temperature. By that I mean the lowest temperature setting. And what we can also do is we can twiddle with the amount that this zone is opened. It's rare that I do this. It's rare that you would do it either, but you do have the ability to set each zone to be controlled based on the percentage of opening. If you find for whatever reason that you're just not getting enough air in that room no matter what, you can just blat the thing open to 100% and basically, you know, demand via the temperature control in the top right there that this thing cools as much as it can, and just make sure all the air gets dumped that's available, you know, gets dumped out that zone to keep it as cool as possible. An intelligent auto for the top unit here just allows Airtouch to control the actual fan speed, which is a new feature. Previously you could only say auto, which would let Mitsubishi do it. You could only do high or low. Now, the high or low fan speeds can be controlled by the actual Airtouch unit itself. Okay, so now let's look at the settings you've actually got within Airtouch to control your unit. Note that I don't make use of a lot of the automations here. I integrate this with Home Assistant, and I get Home Assistant to do all of my automations. I do actually tick the internet access box here. It's meant to be ticked. What this basically means is you have cloud-based access to the air conditioner. So via your Android phone or iPhone, you can be out at the beach and say remotely, turn that air conditioner on, baby, I'm coming home, so that when you get home, the actual house is cool. This is a cloud service, so you're not exposing your home to the internet. It's actually just hosted through Airtouch, and you're connecting to the Airtouch servers in the cloud. And yeah, it is authenticated. The smarts features with geofencing, weather adaptation, and alerts. I don't, again, make use of this not because Airtouch is bad, but because what the control I have in Home Assistant through the Home Assistant integration is a lot more powerful. I'm a big Home Assistant nerd. I actually haven't released many videos on Home Assistant, but I probably will. There's a whole bunch of stuff you can do. Now, if you find that these automated adaptations are good for you, and literally, if you're not a nerd, this will be the way you do it. I thoroughly recommend setting it up. Get your installer to help you with this to work through it. There's some stuff coming up here on alerts. Again, I don't use these, again, because I use Home Assistant to actually do this. Yeah, so you can send alerts when it's to your Android phone, by the way, when these temperatures, levels, ranges are exceeded. Now, what's annoying about air conditioners today is you can't set the minimum temperature below 19. Odd, because in your car you can set it to like 17 degrees. Slightly annoying, but I find that 19 is positively freezing. Like most of the time, my rooms are 22 to 23. If it's a really, really, really hot day and you feel that temperature delta, 21 perhaps. Away modes are handy. It can detect when you leave the house, again based on the presence detection of your Android phone, for example. You can press the away mode button. I think there's a button you press which just says away on the console here, which puts it into a low power mode, like a wider temperature range. Personally, I use my Android phone. The sensor lists. So as I said before, every room has its own zone and its own temperature sensor. You can see the temperature spread here. It's quite early in the day. The heat hasn't really gotten into the ceiling yet and started to come through the windows, for example, or bake the exterior walls. So it's quite cool. But you can add practically as many temperature sensors as you like. There is obviously a limit, but you're unlikely to hit it in a house. Let's put it that way. Note this setting here where you can turn the AC on when a zone is turned on. People can turn the zones off in their rooms by pressing a button on the temperature controller. I don't recommend that because you can find that your kids turn it on at 2 in the morning and start burning through power. So unless it's a house full of adults, you probably don't want to turn that on. Okay, so we're in installer mode now, and I want to focus here on the zoning configuration, and you'll note once I go to the zoning configuration page, with Intelligent Auto you can set the size of the ducts in that room. and the number of ducts, or you can set the actual square meterage of that room, which basically is what the intelligent auto system uses to determine whether a fan needs to be on high or low based on the square meterage of the room, which is actually cooling or heating. So here it comes up now. So you can see here that we actually have the zones, and it's just some basic settings about which sensors are used for that zone. So it's that zone sensor 1. There are multiple sensors. If you had multiple sensors per zone, you would choose here which ones they were. Now under the advanced settings here, this is where you can set whether it's not intelligent or it's using the number of outlets and their sizes or the area. And I've done the outlet sizes for each of these rooms, and this is what's used to control intelligent auto and what the fan speeds are. Now for AC setup, just looking at the basics here, note it says multiple ducted systems and what the control sensor is for each of these. Auto basically means it's going to choose the appropriate temperature sensor to drive the compressor based on which zones are satisfied or not. And the living room one has a dedicated sensor applied. There is actually a temperature sensor in the control panel, but Airtouch has realized it's actually not very accurate, so they've recommended that nobody use that. The detailed settings for each air conditioner allow you to set the fan speeds, which are supported. Obviously, there's only 2 fan speeds supported on the Mitsubishi, so it's these low, high, auto, mapped to what the actual fan speeds are in the Mitsubishi system itself. And there's a cooling and heating deadband, which allows it to basically override a bit when the compressor is turned on or off, and that helps with energy efficiency. So now let's get into the spill and bypass settings. As we explained earlier, you absolutely want to have a bypass, not a spill, and it tells it which of the dampers, which channel on the controller is the damper which does the bypass. And you can have multiples, for example. So I have damper A configured on the control board in the ceiling, and it knows when it needs to do bypass, that's the damper motor it will actually control to, control the bypass functionality. So these are the sections of Airtouch that I don't use. You can set programs that turn the air conditioner on or off at certain times of the day. I just don't use these. I either do it manually or I control it via Home Assistant. We just don't have a consistent enough life nor dedication to having the system turned on for cooling or heating just based on like a comfort level. We find that we turn it on and off when we need it. But this really is up to you. You can absolutely have your system on a timer or a program that works for you. Particularly this would look very similar to one of the older 1990s style schedules you can set up in old ducted heating systems. All right, I'm inside. We're looking here at the study. I'm in the study, and the study has an outlet right there. Now this study is soundproofed. There's rubber strips around the doors, a solid core door, and there's a rubber strip along the bottom of the door as well. So what happens when you start pushing air out of that? Well, the room pressurizes and you get this horrible whistling noise. So for some of my rooms that actually have this kind of soundproofing, I've got their own dedicated return. So what does that look like compared to the rest of the house? Well, there is the main return for that 14 kilowatt unit. And in the home theatre room, which has got a black ceiling because I use a projector, we got the same. We have a return and we have its outlet. And so the air obviously is released from there, flows across the room, exits through there. This room is very well soundproofed. It's got a much more beefy soundproof strip around the outside of that door jamb. So that's also necessary. But both the study and this room have their own dedicated temperature sensor for the Airtouch. The room is currently on, but the temperature it's reaching or set to is controlled at the console. But I can also press this and turn it off. And that will now, even if this room was too hot or too cold compared to the set temperature, it will close in the ceiling the damper valve. But let's turn it back on because it's going to be a hot day. Now, speaking of damper valves, this is the motor driver for a damper valve. So in the ceiling, you've got your really huge duct, and there's a big flapper inside the damper, and it's driven by a little motor like this. It's got a little sort of RJ45 type connection to it, 24 volt AC. I believe that's what it'll say on the side. AC 24 volts, 50 hertz. Let me actually see if I can get a better zoom on that, because the focus on some of these lenses is not as good as others. There we go. So this is driven by the Airtouch controller in the ceiling, and it's a little motor which turns a little shaft like that drives the damper in the ceiling. So we were saying every room should be zoned. Every room should have its, by zoning we mean it has its own damper, right? Every room should have one of those. And every zone should have its own temperature sensor. If you don't do that, your amount of control that you're going to get is going to be all over the place. Someone's going to be too hot, someone's going to be too cold. It's just not going to work. The other thing you should not do is put these temperature sensors right next to your gaming PC. Because my son did that, and his room was always getting overcooled, although his room was very hot. Right, now for some closing thoughts while we sort of sit here with the lovely Airtouch website in the background. There's some really important things to make sure you don't stuff up. Number one, find the right installer. The guy I had install my air conditioner had no idea about Airtouch. He stuffed it up. It was a terrible install. The quality was crap. I had broken ducts in the ceiling. All sorts of problems. So number one, find a good installer in general. Number two, make sure that installer is well aware of how these third-party zoning systems work. If you find an installer who's been doing it for 55 years and he says, I've been doing it for 55 years and uses that and only that as the reason why he's the right guy to do it, no. Just because they've been doing it for 55 years doesn't mean anything. They could be stuck in the past and not understanding how modern zoning controls actually work. Personally, I have found a number of edge cases, even with Airtouch, that nobody was aware of. And I'm a nerd, and no one, aside from one guy on the Gold Coast, Michael from Pinnacle Air, who has helped me at no cost, who knows a great deal about the Airtouch system in particular, and is also very close to the Airtouch engineers. So he's very close to that business. He gives them feedback. They develop new capabilities. That is absolutely critically important. Number two, this can be used with many different brands of air conditioning system. It doesn't have to be Mitsubishi Electric. In my case, I chose Mitsubishi Electric because Mitsubishi Electric is made in Japan. I have a strong belief in the quality of their product. There are other good systems like Daikin, for example. You also need to be aware that there are many air conditioning systems which work with these, but are also of lower quality. Mitsubishi have a subdivision called Mitsubishi Heavy Industries. They're not made in Japan, they're made in China. The quality varies, right? So you need to be aware of what model it is that you're purchasing and the potential implications over the long term of the quality and warranty of that system. Get the right number of ducted air conditioning systems for your house. If you can't get three-phase power, get the largest possible system you can that will cool the majority of your house, even if you have to have some zones turned off because it doesn't have enough power to cool the entire house. My recommendation to you would be, if you can't get three-phase power, get the largest system you can be legally allowed to have on your electricity panel. Add the zones for every room in the entire house and see how you go. If it can't cool the entire house, then sure, set some configuration rules up that limit which zones are open at any given time. But a lot of the rules used by installers to determine how big a system you need are based on assumptions about your insulation, assumptions about the energy loss of your property, right? So there's a lot of headroom and wiggle room in there for these guys. You might find that a 14 kilowatt system cools and heats your house perfectly because maybe you set your house to 23 degrees and you never want it to go down to 19 degrees. It could be perfectly fine. So yeah, be aware of that as well. So that's my advice. I recommend you get ducted. I recommend you get zoning. I recommend you split the system up into as small a system as you can possibly, a number of small systems to reduce the lowest possible energy consumption when there's only one zone being cooled rather than one massive three-phase system. And I hope it suits you. Good luck.